Welcome everyone to This Week in Svelte. I'm Paolo. I will be your host for today, and today we have a community showcase, which is always exciting for me. So let's jump right into it because we will have obviously the changelog. We will have a small announcement, the community showcase, and then a couple of questions and answers, hopefully better than last time. So I will share my screen and we can start immediately with the changelog. And actually, there was only one huge release this week. I guess you can see, usually there are four, three things, but we weren't releasing from a bit. So there is one huge release for Svelte at least. So let's go over it and let's see if there's something interesting in it. There are some bug fix. For example, these the nesting selector was basically not allowed in pseudo classes. So if you had a has or a is or a you could not use the pseudo selector, the nesting selector inside them. This was very fun for me, and I want to show you because um, initially, in this PR, error on invalid element name, we restricted the amount of character, not the amount, but the range of characters that you could use as component identifiers. But someone properly pointed out that, if I want to use my language to create a component, I should be able to do it, and I think it's absolutely fair. But when I saw this issue, I was very it's fun because obviously he was demonstrating that any of these character was working, but this component name is really fun to me. So yeah, now it's actually possible. You can actually have a component like this and it works. Very cool. um, Improve SSR parent validation, prevent nullish snippet for rendering empty content. So I think this was actually so basically the original issue. Yeah, exactly. The original issue was kind of the opposite. So if you did something like render func, where function was undefined, this was not throwing any error and stuff like that. But if you had something like this, where you're not using a state, then this actually was erroring out, which was a pretty weird stuff. So now, if the snippet is nullish and you are not using a chain expression, so because currently you can actually do the reason why we wanted this is because there is a way to prevent this. Let's see. Okay, so this is error, but if you are doing something like this can actually be prevented. So it's much better to be explicit about stuff. So if you know that this function could be undefined, then you should use the nullish corrections, because otherwise, if you are not expecting it to be undefined and it is undefined, then you can get a broke application basically. So this was also pretty interesting. Ensure init script tag are properly removed. I guess this is for we are removing internal script tags. This basically means that if there are basically the moment you are writing an actual script in the Svelte template, so not the Svelte script, but you want to render an HTML script. There was this function run scripts that basically invoked the content of those script, so that when you mount that component, they are actually run. But I think it was it contained a stale tag. There was if you unmounted and then mounted again, the script was still there and it was messing with the cleanup of the component. So yeah, there's also something. There was a lot of work around derives and inspect, and this was like bugs around derives are the weirdest one. And in this case it's pretty funky because basically if you had an inspect inside the component, it was basically making like the reactivity fail. And the reason is because inspect are something that it was actually discussed if Svelte should add, which is inspect is actually a synchronous effect. What does it mean? It means that an effect in Svelte 5 is not run immediately. So if you have something, let's actually make an example very quickly here. Let's say that I have an effect here and I console log count. This count log is not executed immediately after the count is updated. So just to show you, let's say that I have a console log here. So this is count, for example. No, this will not be clear. So let's say increment, and let's say count effect. So if I have something like this, whenever I click, as you can see, like increment runs like, so the function finished to run and then the effect runs, because effect are executed in a micro task. So this means that before the effect, every effect can execute, the code on the stack of JavaScript stack needs to be finished. So basically every function call should be terminated and stuff like that. If you want to see a very cool video about event loops in JavaScript, I suggest you the one from Jake Archibald. So the point is, effects are not synchronous. So you run these, and then after a micro tick, you run the effects. And this is perfectly fine. The difference is with inspect, because inspect needs to run synchronously. So in theory, I might be wrong, but if I click, you can see that oh, I was not expecting this. This might be a bug. I need to check. I'm always finding bug, because like if I remove the inspect and I click, is increment one effect. But if I add the inspect, is effect update and then increment. I think this is a bug. As always, we are finding bugs live. But regardless of these, basically this should run after increment. But in reality, like inspect is running before increment. Yes, this is definitely a bug. So inspect instead is running. So let's say that we don't have effect to not confuse stuff. So we are basically doing the same thing. So we have update and then increment. And if we are doing the opposite, we have increment and then update and then the effect. Now this thing is basically the reason is that, like, why this is problematic is because if you run inspect in a derived, so if you are inspecting a derived, what was happening before, and now the bug is fixed, is that if you are reading some other derived inside the inspect, you are actually reading the derived inside the other derived. So the derived got an extra dependency basically because of inspect. But now it's been fixed. So I know it's pretty complex. The whole graph reactivity is very complex topic, but don't worry about it. Now it's been fixed. I need to file this bug though later. ensure types are easier to follow for TypeScript. So this um, basically TypeScript, especially the new release of TypeScript, is doing something with libraries, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Let me see, because I think it's the new release. No, sorry. I think the problem is actually in the new release. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Okay. No, I was wrong. Sorry. So we are using some. Okay, this is completely internal, so you don't care about it. Internally, like we are using import syntax for JSDoc, but this also means that TypeScript is very bad at following this type while generating the .d.ts for the users, so for you. And we can't do that. So this is basically a reversed. Um, this was also pretty interesting, a kind of a niche bug, but interesting. So basically, Svelte is actually whenever you perform a triple equal, in dev mode is like checking the equal inside this function, which is called strict equals. And the reason because we do that is because by doing these, we inside this function we can check if you are trying to check the equality between a state and unknown state variable, and warn you about it. But this means that in some very niche cases, for example, if you are trying to check the equality on load of an iframe, the iframe can't access anything. Like, so if you are if you want to check if some iframe reference is the same as the other, by doing this strict equals, it was failing because you can't you can't check if, like, from the iframe you can check if on the window, for example, there's something with the in keyword for security reason, and so it was throwing. So we just try catched it. This was also fun because like it was showing state reference locally on types. Yes, something about ownership. We also got better types for autocomplete. I don't know if you like, this is basically just for TypeScript, but the autocomplete field in an input allow you to have, so you can do basically input autocomplete, and you have a very like there are a lot of autocomplete values, um, and those autocomplete values are also kind of defined, so we can actually provide IntelliSense for it. And there's even in TypeScript there is already uh, a type for it, which is, I want to show you because we actually, so this is the spec from the HTML about what you can pass to autocomplete. And there are a bunch of stuff like name, nickname, organization title, username. And what this does is it gives kind of semantic meaning to the autocomplete, so that for example, Android, and yeah, you can also pass an array. So it's not really an array. I think it's comma separated. But I think you can pass these, and basically, like, for example, street address. Browsers are really smart, so if you say that this should be a street address, they try to suggest your street address that you saved before. Or I don't know, if you have autocomplete password, I guess. For example, this is very cool, like CC name is for credit cards, CC number is for the number. So if you have an autocomplete of CC number, you will actually get prompted to, like, okay, let's fill with your saved card. So all of these, like, it's very cool in my opinion, because you can literally put whatever like the right thing for the form, and the browser will smartly suggest you something. And now we are typing for it, so when you command space in your input autocomplete, you will get the list, which is cool. Mm, inspect signals, this is very similar to what we did before. And visit expression for svelte component reference, this is just a bland fix for something that was not working. No release for SvelteKit. I think some release for ESLint plugin Svelte. Yeah, okay. Oh, okay. That's cool because basically, so this is an ESLint rule about HTML self-closing. As you know, Svelte now is trying to steer you in the right direction and not allowing you to have a self-closing HTML element that should not be self-closing. There's a whole story about it, but basically, in HTML, there's literally a list of elements that can be self-closed, and if you are not like if you try to auto close a div, you are not really auto closing it. So let's say that you have something like this, for example. You have div like this, hello. This hello is actually inside the div. So despite you thinking that it's outside, is actually inside. And I don't know if we actually do this, but okay, no, in this case, it's still a warning because like otherwise it will be a pretty bad breaking change. So it's just a warning, but I guess in Svelte 6 probably we will uh, remove this and be confident, because if I do this in CodePen, for example, so let's do pen.new. If I do this in CodePen and I inspect the HTML element, this hello, it's inside the div. Like this is how HTML render the thing. So Svelte for the moment is not doing it, and because it will be a pretty big breaking change. But I guess like we are warning you about this because like that's the plan for Svelte 6 to like probably do the right thing. Let me see. Can you please? Okay. Oh, I guess they're not custom. Didn't know there was a resource for this. Oh, you are talking about the autocomplete part. Yeah, very cool. Okay. I mean, there is discussions about this. The point is, uh, a lot of people think that doing div slash hello inside Svelte way is better, in my opinion. So the fact that it's outside, like you're saying that the fact that it's outside is better, and a lot of people thinks like this. But the truth is, and I agree with Rich Harris, because Rich was pretty like heavily in favor of warning for this. The truth is that HTML will very likely survive Svelte. So in the future, like in 20 years, people will still write HTML and people will probably not write Svelte. So if now today Svelte educate people about this behavior, in the future we will have better website. So I know like this might sound philosophical, but I kind of agree. Like I think the a good framework should also educate its users, and that's why, for example, in Svelte, if you try to do div on click, it will warn you because yeah, I mean this needs to be a function, but like it's a warning. It's just telling you like you should think about heli. You should think about accessibility. Does this means that you can never do div on click? No, because if I have something like this, for example, uh, there's a reason why I put the on click on the button, is because I want to catch all the click inside the buttons itself. And so like this is valid code, and I would personally just svelte ignore this, but I can't remember the code now. So let me grab the code. Let's say this. So I can just svelte ignore this, and probably the other one too. So I would just like do this if I know what I'm doing. But svelte is telling you, please watch that, like you might doing something wrong. So I think like it's also the responsibility of a framework to kind of educate people around this. I also want to answer this other question. Can I export snippet from one file to the other, almost like utils? No. For the moment, there is a plan to do that, but it's quite complex to do because we are using Acorn to parse the script tag, and if you try to export something from it that was not defined, it will error out. But regardless, for the moment, there's no way. But also, I mean, I feel like the moment you need to write another file to export a snippet and stuff like that, at that point you can just write a component, and it's much better and it's much more flexible and stuff like that. So let's go back. Svelte ESLint parser, incorrect room reference when having empty compiler option. Get proper IntelliSense. Yeah, nothing incredible, nothing in particular. So yeah, the changelog is done. So let's move now to the announcement, which I guess like you already know, but today is your last chance because tomorrow talk submission will close. So today is your last chance to get to talk at the Svelte Summit. It will be here in a month or so. And so, yeah, submit your talk. We want to hear about you. If you are working on a library, on a cool website, if you made a migration from React to Svelte, if you are making a migration from Svelte to React, I pity you, but like you can also talk about that. Wherever, like if you have something Svelte related that you want to talk about, we want to hear from you. So that was a quick thing, and now it's time for me to add to the show Mew now. And sorry, I forgot to ask your actual name and how you wanted to be called. Sorry, my fault. So I will add you to the stage, Mew now, and he's gonna present a library. Sorry, there is my son. He's say hi to everybody.
Hello.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you got my name right.
I will mute myself and I will leave you to Mew now that will present his library. So.
Yeah, right. Okay, so state machines. It's a very boring subject, but Svelte 5 has been making them really fun. So I thought about making just a general introduction to state machines, because I published this. I wouldn't call it a library, but more of a guide on how to do a state machine in Svelte 5 and have it all reactive. So what is a state machine? Let's look at this picture here. We have a door being modeled as a computational model where it has two states, opened and closed. And we have two entry actions called open door and closed door. So when modeled, this door is opened and then it closes, and then it's opened and closes. So this just keeps on going over and over, and it's a very simple model of a state machine. But you can see that we have a state and we transition to that state, and there can be there can be some context that were in here, like, you know, how many times was the door opened or stuff like that. So what can we use this for? So it's very popular in like making games, making anything user-facing that has a state, for example, music players, video players, that kind of thing. And we can make our own little driving game here. So we have a car. The arrow keys don't do anything yet except move the page, because I had a little padding there. That, okay. They do nothing. So how do we start? We create a new FSM, finite state machine. And the first parameter is a context, which means just some kind of a object. So let's give it a speed. How fast are we going? The next one is called states, which are the states that our car is in. So, for example, there's an idle state. Oops. And the last one is just what's the initial state of the machine. So where do we start in? And I'm going to start this. And the way I've done this is everything is async, so I could make some server calls or something. But if you make your own state machine, you know, feel free to make it synchronous. There's really no correct way of doing this. And we can take a quick look here. And this code that I've written for the state machine, it's about 130 lines. So, and it's got logging and all of this stuff. So if you want to write your own, then it's a very simple thing to do. But let's continue on with our thing here. So our state machine is started, but the car isn't doing anything. So we have to do something. Let's see. Make an on accelerate. And when you make an on event, this means that you can send an event called accelerate to the machine, and then it will do something. So for example, we will get the context over here. And let's see, context.speed +1. Sounds good. And we want, because we're increasing speed, we probably want to move to another state. Let's call it moving. And from this one, we can actually return moving. And then we're in this state. All right. Need to do one more thing here, which is make this type safe. So we're in the moving state, and let's see, we could just have some handlers here as well. So we'll have a accelerate and decelerate functions. So I'll go over this quick. So if the current speed is under 5, then raise the speed and go back to moving. This, when decelerating, we're just doing the same thing in reverse. And if you go to 0, we're going back to idling. So let's wire this up. I'm just gonna have my magical code bit here. There we go. So what do we do here? we're just listening to a svelte window, key down events. There's an arrow up. We're sending an accelerate event to the state machine. We're pressing arrow down. We're sending decelerate. So let's see what happens. Nothing happens. I'm pressing up and down because there's nothing being done to the car. So how can we represent this? Well, I've done something in the CSS where we pass the speed to it as a CSS variable. And if we add a special class, hopefully, yeah, we have a little broom, broom, broom going. So as you can see here, we're in, I'll put the state on display here so you guys can see what's going on inside the machine. So we have state. So now it's idling. I'm going to press up. It's moving. Keeps moving when I press up and down. And when I press down until 0, it goes back to idle. So what else can we do with this real quick? So let's do something fun, like how about adding moving left and right? So let's go back to arrow left. Move left. And move right. Okay, but it's not actually doing anything because we don't have an event handler for those. So let's go back to the moving state. And let's add our handlers here. So move left, context, and let's see, let's call it position. It goes to the left, so -1. We need a position in our context as well. Oops. Great, and I move right. And we're back to the moving state. And let's do something for the, so we need to add to this style here. So it actually does something visually. Let's do position. And because Svelte provides the reactivity, everything under context is reactive. So you can just say, you give me the position every time it updates, and it'll just update the style over here. Don't have to do anything special. And there we go. Got our car going back and forth. And let's see what else is fun. How about we could add something fun here. Let's make a crashed state if you go too far off. And because this one has a branch, it actually widens the type correctly, so you don't have to do as-const. But we do need a crashed state. I'm just going to copy this. All right, And we need something fun for the car when we're in the crashed state. There we go. All right. So let's go through the code real quick. Move this over. Refresh it so it's not so distracting. So it's a very simple code, as I was saying. So we have a context, we have some states, initial state. You can set a debug boolean, so it'll log state transitions and what you send to it and stuff like that. And when you start it, it just sets the state to the initial state and it transitions to it. So what is a transition? A transition is something that has the one state and goes to the other state. So let's see here. So when the door is opening or closing, that's a transition. So when the car is accelerating or decelerating from speed 1 to speed 0, and it goes to the idle state like that. That's a transition. And we I haven't utilized them in the example here, but let's see if I can do something. Would be logical, but I'll go over the concept of a guard, which is a function that just gets run when the transition happens. So when we're trying to transition from idle to moving, then this guard runs. So for example, if context.speed is 0, it will return false. So this should having a brain freeze here. Context speed 0, turn false. Guess we're adding to the speed over here. So yeah, it'll break the machine currently because it won't transition to the moving state until I press it twice, because it stays in the idle, but it still keeps. So how can we fix this? Let's make a enter function. So this gets run when you're past the guard and you're moving or you're transitioning into the state. The guard passes, and then you have an enter function. So you can run something over here. Let's see. Let's put context speed +1, which will completely break the machine again. Now it doubles the speed every time I move, because it returns to the moving state again, and the enter function gets run again. But you can see that you can run some code on the context, mutate it, and yeah, that's it. And another state is or another thing over here is called goto. I called it goto because it's a goto. So instead of staying in the state, it would just transition into some other state immediately. So let me just remove this crap over here. Add that all there. And we're moving. And when it crashes, it should go back to idle. Yep. All right. So this has been a crash course into how you can do a crappy car game with finite state machine. But yeah, I've published this on GitHub npm. I implore you to just take a look at the code. It's very simple. Like you can just follow this along yourself and write your own. It's very fun to mess around with these. And if you have a project where you find yourself that you have a lot of booleans that you're tracking in different templates, or you're using the context a lot, or way too much, then it might be advisable for you to have some kind of global state machine, perhaps, where you can track where the user is, what they're doing, which actions are allowable for them to do in that state. And yeah, Svelte 5 makes it easy. If you want to make your context and the current state reactive, you just say, give me a reactive state, and that's it. That's all you need to do. Yep.
Okay. I will intervene. Very, very cool. First thing first, like I think very nice demo. It's very like it's vintage, but also it was particularly convincing, despite being very very few lines of code. It was really feeling. I could feel the speed.
And the thing is, we can when you define it like this, then you have your whole functionality displayed over here. And it's very easy to reason about. And this is type safe, so if you make a typo over here, it'll complain to you like, oh, that state doesn't exist.
I was also noting this, and I think it's pretty sweet. You get auto-completion, you get type safety. Like personally,
the only thing is you need to widen the types sometimes, because
I know. I was looking at. Are you sure there's no other way to do it? I guess
I haven't found it, but if anyone knows it, please let me know. Like, just
I think
file an issue or something. Or
one thing that you could do. I saw that when you create the machine, you have to declare everything as const, right? Like in the end.
The state machine. Otherwise it narrows the type to the first.
I think you can use there is the type const that you can put on the generic to allow you to basically say this is
so the actual type is const. Okay, I'll give that a shot. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that could be. I don't know if it widens the function return to, though. I think that's not the case, unfortunately. So yeah, you will have to do as const, but it's very, very cool. And I can also answer a question from Don Hopkins, which is the file name fsm.svelte.ts the magic word that makes the code reactive? And kinda yes, in the sense that obviously what actually make the code function is what Mew now wrote. But yeah, the .svelte.ts basically tells Svelte this is something that you need to process. So
so you can use state and all these other declarations in a .svelte.ts or .js file.
Yeah, and very, very, very cool. I like it. And also, I'm a particular fan of finite state machine. I know that not everybody loves them because it can get intimidated, but personally I think it's a very structured and easy way to think about your application state.
When
you are in this state, you can move to this state, and
I think the biggest advantage is you getting the guardrails, so some events cannot happen when you're in some certain state. So your UI can basically be very dumb, or the event handlers can be very dumb, like in my code here, where I just set them up as a global send to the machine. So the machine will know if I can accelerate or if I can decelerate or move left, because I've crashed. And there's no accelerate or decelerate or whatever events over here.
Yeah. And Captain Codeman is saying it would be nice to make the lib type safe rather than using strings, so you'd get IntelliSense for your model. I think he's actually it's actually type safe.
if you want to use typed over here, nothing's stopping you from just using some const over here. And then just going food bar, and then you have the symbols.
Yeah, okay. I think in general is as type safe as it can be, but maybe I'm missing something, because I think is inferring the values and stuff like that. So I think.
So you have the context type safe.
Yeah, also true. Yeah.
And all of this returns.
It's also not as intimidating as infinite state machine. Yeah, infinite is gets weird.
Okay. This is on GitHub and npm. You can play around with.
Yes. I don't know if you can post the link to YouTube directly. Otherwise, if you post it in the private chat, I will make sure to drop it in the chat and give it a star, give it a follow, and contribute. Like if you start using it and you get some open issues, open PRs, contribute to it.
Yeah, there's the URL.
Yeah,
I posted it in the private chat too, so you can have it. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I will copy it. Thank you for showcasing, and weekly reminder that if you are doing something similar, like if you're building a library, if you're building a website, and you want to showcase it to This Week in Svelte, please reach out. You can join the Discord, so svelte.dev/chat. Join the Discord. Please tag me, because I love when stuff like this gets showcased in This Week in Svelte, and I want you to showcase your work too. Thank you, Mina.
Yep, thanks a lot.
Okay, let's go back to this, and we are in live code, but we will live code a bit later. I promise this time will be better than last time, because it's much simpler. And actually, maybe we can start with that, and then we can have the final discussion later. Or maybe not. You know what? I will start with the discussion, and so that if someone has ideas, then while we do the brief live code explanation, we can gather this thing. So the thing that I want to talk about was inspired by this blog post, and I will actually link this in chat. And it's called trailing slash for frameworks. And it's a very interesting blog post that goes over this thing that is trailing slash. Now, if you have deployed some SvelteKit application, but I mean, it's the same for most frameworks. And it's also this thing is a very simple thing. It's just a slash at the end of a URL, but really affects your whole deploy process, because it affects where you deploy, it affects which framework you deploy. So what are we talking about? The trailing slash is basically a way to think about files. So in the good old days, so let's go over, I think there was a very, okay. So let's say that we are on example.com. In the good old days, you didn't have fancy routing. You didn't have you were just putting files on a server and serve them statically. So if you put an index.html on example.com and you go to example.com/index.html, you get the .html. Now, since obviously for a user writing example.com/index.html, it's pretty annoying. You have to always write index.html, and it can get pretty complex. You can get a lot of folders, a lot of weird file names and stuff like that. And so what basically was what's the norm is that there are some how can I say, some convention like this one. So whenever you see an index.html, in reality, like we are just removing the index.html. So if you go to example.com, it's actually reaching for index.html. The same is true if you go to example/, it's reaching for index.html. If you go to example.com/file, generally it's just dropping the .html. So servers are configured so that if you go /file, you're actually getting a file.html. And things get complicated when you start to mix and match this thing. The reason for this is because, like, let's say that you go to example.com/folder. This usually should refer to example.com/folder/index.html. But it could also refer to a folder file, folder.html. So basically, frameworks, when like they are being built, needs to decide what they want to do with trailing slash. So either you can disallow trailing slash completely, so you cannot access a path with a trailing slash. That's usually the wrong option. You could enforce trailing slash. So you can't access a path without a trailing slash unless the path is like the root or there's literally a resource. So if you want to go to data.json, it's fine, but if you want to go to like about, you need to go to example.com/about/. You can make a choice based on a root. So based on what files are in the root, you can define, like, so if you have source root files.jsx, this can only be served at /file and not /file/. And instead, if you define something with index.jsx, or in our case .svelte, wink, this can only be served at folder/. So basically, the framework is decided. So if there is an index, you can access it with the /. If there's no index, you can just access it without it. Or you can allow bot and allow like basically you will serve the same content from bot trailing slash and no trailing slash, which is a bit more complex. And what is also clear about is that like there's no problem. Like when you mean you cannot access a path, this means that either is a 404 literal, or you can also return a 301 and redirect to the correct path. So you could say, like, if I don't see a trailing slash and I know that you can't access that, I will just redirect you to the non-trailing slash part. So yeah, except the last one, because it can lead to confusion. The rest are perfectly fine. Like you can either make a decision or like allow to the user to make a decision with an option. Usually it's wrong to like allow for bot to serve the same content, because that can really lead to problems. Basically, what are those problems? Like basically the problems that he's showcasing is that search engines might be confusing about which URL to index. User can share a link and like two different links point to the same resource, which is not the best. Also, obviously, that there are more work needed to make sure that relative references are correct, and we go into deep about this later. And also, that's another thing that you should be like very aware of, is the fact that like if you have these differences, those are two different HTTP requests, so they will be cached separately. So you will have basically for every page, you will have like the moment you access it with the trailing slash, you get a different cache. So you for every page you might get two entries in the cache. And what I was saying is that the problem is when you have relative references, because inside your HTML or your Svelte files, wink wink, you are not referencing the whole path. Generally, you do stuff like this. So it's ./stuff or /stuff and stuff like that. But the meaning of this / changes greatly if you are in a lead, like with a trailing slash or not. So, for example, if you are inside index.html and you want to reference stuff.html, you can just do .stuff.html. And so if you are inside folder, so if you are using trailing slashes and you do ./stuff.html, this will resolve to the correct file. But if you have no, then this will resolve in the wrong folder. So because if you think about it, if this is a folder and you try to access from the current folder the file stuff.html, you will go to folder stuff.html. But if you are here, the last slash is actually here. So by doing ./ the folder is the root. So you're actually accessing stuff.html. And there are other cases like this that the author line. So feel free to take a look. But are always cases like this. For example, this is the opposite. So you want to access stuff.html. So if you are here and you access .folder/stuff.html, this will resolve correctly. If you have a trailing slash, that will resolve not correctly. So like this is the general way of like what's the problem. And we can also, like, there's also the problem of development and production consistency. You want consistency between development and production. And he's also doing an ecosystem review. So what hosting providers are doing, what frameworks are doing. So, this is actually what servers are doing. So Express, Serve, and stuff like that. And what we are interested in is what SvelteKit is doing. I mean, I hope you are interested in, because otherwise, what are you doing on This Week in Svelte, the Friday afternoon at 6:30 p.m. Sorry, it's 6:30 for me. But yeah, basically we are interested in what SvelteKit is doing. Is it SvelteKit doing the right thing? I think SvelteKit is doing the right thing, because by default, SvelteKit is actually removing trailing slash. So if you go to /about/, it will respond with a 301, so with a redirect that will actually redirect you to /about. So they made a decision, but it's also configurable, which is cool in my opinion, because everybody has different, not only opinion, but even needs. So it's correct that, in my opinion, you should be able to do it. You can do it on a per route basis. So from every layout, from every route, you can actually do export const trailing slash and export one of the options. Or it can be global, like if you export from the root layout and stuff like that. And there are actually 3 options. So like it might not be the perfect solution regarding the author of the blog post, because there could be never, which is the default, so you will never have trailing slash, always, which is it will always have side effect. So this means trailing slash. So if you visit /about, it will redirect you to /about/. But they also have ignore, which the author of the blog post is like advising against. I think it's fine, especially because they have this huge note here about the trailing slash. Like, ignoring trailing slashes is not recommended. The semantic of relative paths differ between the 2 cases, and it's harmful for SEO. So we have this huge note. If you really want to ignore trailing slashes, I think at the end of the day, it's a good thing that the framework gives you the opportunity to do so. So yeah, this was the discussion about trailing slash. Personally, I never touched it. I think I like more like to have a clean end URL. So I'm fine with never. And I personally can't even think about a use case for ignore, like why you'd want to have that. But I don't know, like the word is very vary. So like I want, like, if you have any of these use case, I would love to hear from you. So let's see if anybody has Okay, we have a question for me now, so feel free to answer in chat if you want, or if you want to answer like by chat, by chatting, by voice, I can drop you back into the live stream. And is curious what the state machine differ from Rundead, which I assume is ruined.dev finite state machine. And I have to be fair, I don't know about ruined, the ruined one. Like, I contributed to ruined, but not to the state machine. So I would be like, we can probably take a look, ruined.dev, and let's see if like we have a finite state machine too. So you can pass my state and my events, disabled, that pass like have these. I think maybe this is I don't know. Do we have so we have off on toggle? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess we also have life cycle, enter, exit. I think it's pretty similar. Probably the bouncing. Yeah, I think actually yeah, is a loving rewrite of svelte-fsm. So yeah, there are multiple options, obviously. If I have to say, like, at the end of the day, the concept of a finite state machine is pretty. Oh, sorry, guys. I was looking at the rune documentation, but on my screen. So you actually didn't see anything. So yeah, it's pretty similar, I guess, because at the end of the day, is a finite state machine. Like, there's only so many way you can like mix and match the finite state machine. I don't know if this auto infer the types. It probably can. And I don't know if, like, for example, I don't see any guard here, but you can still guard against something, I guess. So yeah, I guess at the end of the day, if you want to use a finite state machine, I would explore the various opportunity. So for example, this one, now, finite state machine. And I would also look it for Xstate, which is like a much bigger and complex library, but that's only if you really, really, like, if you are building a very like state intensive application, then maybe it might be worth to go for the big boy, which could be really complex. So like go with like light steps into it because it could be very complex. Okay, so we have done this. Now, the last issue that I want to show you, and in the meantime, if you have any questions, if you have any, if you have any, oh, that's the issue that I opened. Sorry. So if you have any question, if you have any like in things about the trailing slash, please drop them in chat, and we can talk about it later. And what I wanted to show now is another like question that was asked inside Discord. So please feel free, reach svelte.dev/chat, and it was about Svelte module context. So let's go over what Svelte module like the script context module is. So in Svelte, as you may know, you have the script, and this is the template. You can have styles, obviously, button, background, red, and you have this. So you have the script, you have the button, you have the style. Let's say let's look for a moment at something that we shouldn't look at, which is React. So in a React file, in a JSX file, let's say if we can go to react.dev, yeah, we should have some example here. So this is video.js. I don't know if we can actually write here. No, we can't. Yeah, we can't. Yeah, I would love a playground for it, but it's fine. What I want to say is that let's go to react.new. Okay. It's actually using code sandbox, but regardless, this is a svelte component, right? I can edit this. Pretty cool. I need to sign in. Come on. Let's do stackblitz.com. Sorry. Let's create a new project with React. Once again, we are in app.tsx, and imagine someone connecting now and looking at this week in Svelte playing with React. So let's say that we have this. So this is a React component. And as you can see, at the end of the day, a React component is a TypeScript file, basically. This means that you can export your component, like export default app, but I could export whatever I want. I could do export const the answer is equal to 42. And from another Svelte component, for example, main, I could also do this, the answer, right? So if I do this, and if I console log the answer, I don't know if it will. Maybe I need to refresh. Maybe I need to restart the project. Yeah, it did not. I don't know. Is it actually doing? But regardless, the point is, you can export whatever you want from a React component. It may seem that you can't actually do that in Svelte, right? Because if you do export const the answer, and let's actually move this to another component. So component A, for example. So let's say that I create my script and I do export const the answer is equal to 42. Let's do A. If I try to import, the answer from a.svelte, and if I try to log the answer, print the answer, the answer is not exported by a.svelte, imported by app.svelte. What? Why is not exported? I am exporting it. Well, you have to remember that this is a Svelte component. So this script tag is not the actual script tag. This is not a JavaScript file. And let me refresh to get rid of the annoying error. So this is actually a Svelte component. And there's actually a specific thing that exporting const or exporting a function from a Svelte component does. And what it does is that if you import the actual component like this, and then you use the component like this, and then you bind this to the component to get the component instance like that. And so you bind this component instance, and as a throwback to the disaster of last week, you don't need state here, and you get the component instance, and on click, instead of incrementing count, I want to console.log component instance dot the answer. So if I click, I get 42. So this is something that is exported, but is actually attached to the component instance rather than exported from the file itself, which is probably fine. But sometimes you actually need something like this. And that's the reason why we have script context module. So to really nails down what script context module is, I want to show you the compiled output of this component. So if we go to the JS output, this is the actual JavaScript file that will be shipped to the client. So in this case, we are actually not in rune mode, so it's a bit uglier. So let me do that option runes, options runes, just so that it's a bit better. So this is the actual JavaScript file that will be shipped to the client. It's importing from Svelte, is exporting a default function, which is the name of the component, is getting an anchor and a props, and is doing some magic. But the important bit is that is creating a const, the answer, and it's returning $pop with the answer. So this function here is what basically is telling you, like, whenever you have an instance of a function, you can also access the answer from here. But again, this is a JavaScript file. So let's say that I copy all of these and I moved it. Oh, I closed it, StackBlitz. If I move this to like the StackBlitz equivalent, if you remember in what we were doing with React, we were exporting default function for exporting the component, and then we were exporting from here, like not from inside the function. We were exporting from outside the function the answer. And that's where script context module lives. And so if we do script context is equal to module, we will get a warning, because now script, we will get a warning. And this is the first thing that I wanted to show. We already talked about this, but context module is now deprecated, and you can now simply use module, which is much better, at least in my opinion. So you can just do script module, and now watch. Whatever I write here is actually happening here. So if I do export const the answer is equal to 42, now we are exporting from here. And so you can also export from here, it's not a problem, but we don't need it, so let's remove it. And now, instead of importing and doing all this dance of component instance and stuff like that, I can even avoid importing altogether and just import the answer. And this time, this will actually work. So let me remove increment because we don't need it. And we can actually show the answer. If we do this, now it works, 42. Clicks obviously doesn't do anything. So yeah, basically the point is a script module is just telling Svelte, okay, whatever I put here, I don't want it inside the function, I want it here. So what you can use script module for, it's really if you want to export something. For example, a pattern that I started using and I love is whenever I'm using a form, I need to have a series of input, like input name, username, and input name, password, for example. And especially in SvelteKit, whenever I'm using something like this, usually I need to use the same name and the same password on the server to actually get those values. And I don't like the fact that those are just string. So what I'm doing generally is exporting a const fields like this, and then I can do username, which is username, and password, which is password. And then instead of doing this, I can do fields.username and fields.password. So this basically allows me to then import fields from the server, and then I can get value kind of type safe. So if for some reason tomorrow I need to change username, I can just do it type safely. You can also do other stuff, like for example, in theory, I mean, not actually in theory, also in practice. and obviously we are getting problems here, but you could use shared state. So watch this. Let's have here, I want to have a counter. It should work. I hope it works, because otherwise I will be damned. So I can actually do let count is equal to $state 0, and then I can do count here, and then I can do onClick is equal to count plus plus. Okay, it's not complaining, which is good. And I can actually remove runes, I guess, because now it will be in rune mode. I can import, obviously, like there's always the import here, import a from a.svelte. I can remove this, I can remove this, remove this, and I can print a. So we have a simple counter here, right? Nothing particular, but now watch this. If I have multiple, the state is actually synchronized. So you kind of have global state here, so you can put runes here, and just by doing this, this count variable is shared between every a component, which is super cool, right? And obviously, like this is it's a silly thing, but basically you can just move this here, and each one will have its own, or you can move this here, and everybody will have the same. Very cool. Like this is something that was basically unlocked by Svelte 5. And yeah, you can have how many you want, and they will be all synchronized. So this is another possible option. You can also export something that, like for example, some configuration, like if you know, or some default values. Let's say that you have some props and you want to expose what are the default props that you are using for some reason, you can export from that. So it's not super useful, like it's not something that you will use 100% of the time, but it's pretty useful. Let's see if there are any questions. So you are importing just a reactive object without a component. I mean, not in this case. Like in this case, the only thing that I like, this is not a reactive object, and this is a reactive object, but it's used inside the component. So it's not exported from the component. You could export it, but there's always the same problem of the shared reactivity. So if you just export these, like if you do export const count, you can actually get an error. Cannot export state from a module, because if it's reassigned, cannot export state from a module if it's reassigned. Export a function returning the state value, or only mutate the state values property. You can probably do this. No, you can even, like, you can't do this. Let's see if you can do count like this. Yeah, you can do. No, you can't do this. Okay, it's even better. Like Svelte is preventing you from doing stuff that it's dangerous. Because reality is that you should never actually do any of this. If you really, 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 really want to act on this on another file, which I don't suggest, you can export function like add one, and then inside this add one, you can do count plus plus, for example. And now you can import add one from here, and you can use it, for example, on a button and stuff. On click is equal to add one. So if you do something like this, even when you click this, all the rest will be executed. Yes, I should check JS output more often to understand inner workings. Yes, I absolutely advise against, advise like you do like this, because it's very insightful. And if you are not understanding like what's this, like what this function does and stuff like that, I also encourage you to go check the Svelte code base, because it's not that complex. You can just go there and check, okay, what's first child doing? What's sibling doing? What's append doing? And stuff like that. You could use a module export as a registry of all instances of the component. I guess yes, you can do it. Something like basically what you will do to do something like this is either, I mean, with like you can just do this, for example, instead of exporting count. So let me remove this. I mean, very easily you can just do effect, and you can do, you need to untrack in this case, import untrack from Svelte, because you only want to run basically on mount, but you can do untrack, and inside untrack you can do count ++, and now you know how many buttons are there. So there are 6, so every mounting is acting on this. And you could also, I wonder if you could get the instance. I don't think you can get the instance here. I need to think about it to actually have the instance here. But yeah, it's something that could be useful. You can rather than the instance, what you could do is you could create an ID. So const ID is equal to crypto.random UUID. So each one of these, it's an ID. And so you can have let instances is equal to an array, actually const. And we actually I don't think we need, so export const instances. And what you can do is you can do instances dot push ID, and this basically will give you a list of all the IDs of the thing. So if I import instances from here, I can also do each instances as instance each, and I can print instance like this. Instances dot push. Oh, obviously it's not a state now. Silly me. I need state now. So if you do like this, you get this. Let me add a div just to split them into different lines. Yeah. So you get that you have 6, and you kind of have a way to like track each instance separately. It could be useful. For example, let's say like the example that they actually give on the Svelte tutorial, which like go to learn.svelte.dev to take a look. The example that they give is, let's say that you want to have a music player, and whenever something is playing, you don't want the other one to also be playing. You can do something like this with context model. Guys, it's 124. I'm sorry. I kind of like I can't remember the English word for it. I like feel free to go. I know, sorry, it's been a long one. But I think it was fun. Like it was a bit of redemption from the last week, which was kind of bad. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching up until now. I hope you enjoyed Meow showcase. Please feel free to reach if you have anything, and I'll see you guys next time. I lost my